Um, right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining our online seminar series or just seminar series organized by the Department of English and the Communication, PolyU. So today we've got Dr. Zhang Cong, so Dr. Zhang, first name is Zhang. She's a lecturer in phonetics and phonology at Newcastle University. She received her doctorate degree from the University of Oxford and has worked outside academia inside and then back inside academia. So for her outside academia work, she works in developing speech technology products, and her research focuses on aspects of speech prosody, such as intonation and lexical tones, with a particular emphasis on their interaction. She employs a range of experimental and computational methods to investigate prosodic's role in shaping communication. So apart from prosody, she also works on improving the phonetic research pipeline, including reliable remote data collection and gamified citizen science approaches. She also bridges linguistic theory with speech technology, contributing to advance in speech processing and its real-world applications. Apart from prosody, I think Dr. Zhang also recently has worked on sort of accent, regional accent thing, looked into the northeastern accent of the UK, Newcastle, and that project has been reported by both local newspapers like the Chronicle and the national newspapers, the Daily Mirror and the BBC. So great work on the media coverage. So today her talk is I can't see your talk title. It's Tug-of-War, right? Was it?
I will talk
Yeah.
about it. Don't
Okay,
worry.
okay, cool. So I'll just pass the mic so to Dr. Zhang, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bruce, for the very nice introduction. And thanks everyone for inviting me to give this talk. And I'm really excited to share my recent findings with you. Well, some of my presentation today will be from my PhD work, and some of it will be work in progress. I thought that I would love to use this opportunity to share my very preliminary findings with you. And so if you have any feedback, any thoughts, I welcome all of them. And yeah, feel free to challenge anything because these are none of it is set in stones. So when I present, I won't be able to see any of you. So yeah, I hope that's okay. I'm gonna start sharing my slides. Like this. So the title of my talk is Tonal Tug-of-War. This is basically talking about how all different lexical prosodies and sentence prosodies, they kind of fight for the control of F0, which is the main acoustic manifestation of the prosody world. So today I'm going to talk about the interplay of lexical and sentence prosody. Um, Before I continue, I just want to briefly introduce what speech prosody is, just so everyone is on the same page. And because I know maybe some colleagues are not working in prosody, so I just want to make it clear to everyone. So, speech prosody, to put it very simply, it is the musical quality of speech. It is an increasingly popular research area. So my colleague and I did a cross-linguistic review of citation tone production study a while ago. And then we summarized how many studies were published in good journals, good conferences. And then we got these numbers. In 2011, there's a surge in terms of numbers of citation tone studies. And my colleague firmly believes that this is because Hong Kong held the ICPHS that year, and that contributed to the prosody world significantly. So we know Hong Kong as a place for prosody research, and we appreciate the contribution to and the representation from our side of the world. I mean the Asian side of the world. And it also intersects with many other linguistic subfields, such as semantics, pragmatic syntax, and even other disciplines like computational, computer science, and medical science, things like that. Um, we also have a lot of functions for prosody. So today, what I'm going to talk about is mainly linguistic use. And under linguistic use, there's lexical use and post-lexical use. Under lexical use, we also have three categories. One is lexical tone. I think most of our audience today are tonal speakers, so I don't have to introduce this a lot. So basically, varying the pitch of one syllable would result in a word meaning difference. That's what a lexical tone is. Stress is something like English. By moving the stress, we create a meaning difference in the words. And pitch accents, lexical pitch accents are something like combining the lexical tones and lexical stress. Some pitch accents, like Japanese or Persian, they mainly rely on pitch cues, like how high a syllable sounds like in relation to the rest of the syllables. Um, and then some other languages rely more, well, also rely on the stress. So these languages include the Northern European pitch accent languages like Norwegian and Swedish, things like that. So all of these concepts, they can also be used in post-lexical context, which is the sentence context, and they form intonation. So sentence tone is basically a component of intonation. And sentence stress is what we usually call focus or prominence. And sentence pitch accents are the major tone units for intonation. And on the post-lexical level, we also have a temporal domain, and then that takes us to the concept of rhythm. So these two concepts are on the post-lexical level. And also, of course, within the umbrella of speech prosody, we also have paralinguistic uses like emotional prosody, like how we use prosody to express anger and happiness. Just by varying the prosody of sentences, we can express different emotions. And there are also sociolinguistic uses. I just want to highlight one thing. So from different prosodies, we can actually guess some professions. So here I have a fun example. Let's have a listen. Even if you don't listen to the words, you probably can tell what this profession is.
Here is the current world contender and former unified 154-pound champion of the world, Julian J. Rock Williams.
I'm assuming you've all guessed what this profession is. So yeah, this is a host for a boxing match. So there are many professions that are that can be told through the prosodic patterns. And we all have a natural appeal to prosody. There's a natural appeal to humans, and beginning around 20 weeks in utero, that means the baby is in mommy's belly for 20 weeks, the fetus can begin to detect speech sounds, but mainly prosodic features in mommy's belly. So here's a little video. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. So these are two babies. As you can hear, they don't actually have any segments developed, but they have very adult-like intonation patterns, and it sounds like they're talking already. So from that young, people start to pick up prosodic cues. And it has a natural appeal to animals as well. I'm not sure if any of you have dogs, but if you had, you probably know what I mean.
Sit. Hot fudge sundae. Smile. Helicopter.
So this dog is just following the intonation regardless of the words the owner was talking about. So a lot of times I wonder whether dogs actually just pick up humans' emotions and prosodies, and only that. Yeah, I think there will be there are research about it. But since it is such an innate thing in human acquisition, it's very difficult to acquire for L2 speakers. So for a speaker of Mandarin who is speaking English, the intonation is often commented as flat or monotonous. So according to this research, that is because the pitch range is much smaller than L1 English speakers. And also L1 Mandarin and L2 English speakers, they use more mid-key than native English speakers. And perception-wise, it's also more difficult, especially when the listener speaks when the listeners speak tonal language. So compared with non-tonal listeners, tonal language listeners, they perceive tones better. This is within our expectations, right? So like if I'm a Mandarin speaker and I listen to Cantonese speakers' tones, it would be much easier for me than for an English speaker. But it is more difficult for a Mandarin speaker to perceive intonation than a non-tonal listener. So yeah, this is possibly because the limited uh, inventory of intonation patterns in the tonal languages, and then the L1 just transferred to L2. So here's a brief summary of how it works for L2 speakers. And usually by this point, I get asked this question: do tonal languages have intonation? Before we look at that, let's have a look at two intonation tunes that I'm going to talk about in the three languages that I'm going to talk about. So the first one is called calling tune. This is the tune that you use to call someone from afar. It's also known as vocative chant, or chanted call, or calling contour. I think the last one is the most frequently used one nowadays. And here's a little clip from the Disney film Tangled. And so, if you don't know the story, it's about this princess who lives up in a tall tower, and this bad stepmom asked the princess to let down her hair every day to get her up the tower. So in this scene, the stepmom is asking Rapunzel to let her hair down. So listen to how she calls Rapunzel. So that's a typical calling contour, like Rapunzel. So it's very sing-songy, and you can probably imagine how a mom calls a child when she wants the child to come back for dinner or something from afar. And then they continued talking in that tune.
One moment, Mother. I have a big surprise. I do too. Oh, I bet my surprise is bigger. I seriously doubt it.
Yeah, so it's this prolonged sing-songy tune that's called a calling tune. In world languages, there are many studies about it already. So there's a little summary, and then the gist is usually it has a high peak somewhere in all of these languages, and then a sustained mid-level tone. Some studies call it a downstepped high. Some studies call it a low or a mid tone somewhere. Yeah. So, but mainly the contour is like that. Another tune that I'm going to use is polar question tune. This is also called yes no question. So this is an umbrella term for many subcategories like information seeking polar questions, rhetoric, or echo. These are all subtypes of polar questions. So here's another little example. I just want to confirm that we can all hear my video. We can see my video and hear the sound.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Why are we standing here? We're waiting for you to open the door. You've got the keys. No, I don't. Yes, you do. When we left, you said, got the keys. No, I didn't. I asked, got the keys? No. You said, got the keys.
Either of you have the keys?
Yeah, so here we have the contrast between a statement and the polar question with the exact same string of words. So got the keys would be a statement, got the keys would be a question. Yeah, and the three languages I'm going to talk about today are English. English has stress, lexical stress, and Persian. Persian has lexical pitch accents, and also Mandarin. Mandarin has lexical tones. So the English examples are phonological analysis from the literature and examples from some of my work in progress. So the English lexical stress, sometimes they're also called word prominence or lexical prominence. This is just to avoid the term stress because the term stress is more phonological, but today we're not going to talk about that. We just call it stress. And the acoustic correlates are F0. The main acoustic correlates for stress is F0, and then intensity, the louder one being the stress syllable mostly, and duration. In most cases, the stress syllables, they have longer duration. And then the last one is vowel quality. This is especially important in English. So for the unstressed syllables, they tend to be reduced mostly to a schwa. And here's an example from lab 2008. So this is a schematized F0 contour. So for the noun of this word, permit, the peak is here, and then it has a low boundary tone. And then for the verb, permit, the peak is associated with the stress syllable for mit. And for the polar question tune is actually pretty visible. So from the pitch track, we can see the first one is a statement because it ends with a very low tone. It also has a high or low high pitch accent. And then for the yes no question, for the polar question, we have a high boundary tone. And then all the stress syllables are associated with a low pitch accent. So they're very different. I'm emphasizing this because later on when we look at the Mandarin data, you'll see why I'm emphasizing this. And then from the same source, we get the examples for polar question on these two English words. They look very similar, but we know for sure that we have a separate polar question tune. Then how does it work exactly? So here, I've written down the phonological composition of a statement here. So John includes a high pitch accent, which indicates the high peak, and then a low boundary tone, which indicates a falling boundary tone. And then when it has two syllables with the initial syllable as the stress syllable, it's still the same composition. So according to the intonational phonology theory, no matter how long your sentence is, the components should all be the same. And Jonathan, so here there's an extra unstressed syllable, but the high star, it spreads to the second syllable, the unstressed syllable, and the composition is still the same. And for Rebecca, there's an optional L, low tone at the beginning. But when you look at the pitch track, you would realize that low is really just an interpolation. Whether it's there or not will not make a difference. So it's mainly still a high star and a low boundary tone. Many people call this pitch accent low high star, but yeah, there's a huge amount of literature on high star and low high star and how they're different or not different. So we're not gonna talk about that today. So here, this is our canonical statement contour. And then let's look at the questions. So the questions, we just changed the pitch accents into a low, and then change the boundary tone into a high. So this indicates it starts from a low on the stress syllable and then go up towards the end. And for longer names, it's the same for longer utterances. Nothing gets really dramatically changed, and only the type of pitch accents are changed. So if we look at the pitch contour, we can see what is a statement, what is a high pitch, high pick for the statement here becomes a low in the question. And the low boundary tone becomes a high boundary tone. And no matter how long the utterance is, they have the same shape. These are broken because of the consonants. And then if we have a look at the calling contour in English, so we keep the pitch accent as a high as well, but change the boundary tone into a downstepped high, meaning it's still high, but not as high as this high peak. So again, no matter how long the utterance is, the composition or the association don't change. And if we look at the pitch contour as well, the peak is still aligned, well, associated and aligned with the stress syllable, And then there's a long stretch of sustained part for the call. So from this, I just want to illustrate how, regardless of the intonational tune, lexical stress anchors the intonational pitch accents. So basically, the lexical stress is very powerful and the intonation cannot override the lexical stress. And the sentence prosody alters based on the changes in the lexical prosody. So it gives way to the lexical prosody. And then let's look at a very different case in Persian. This is something I will present in PAPE, Phonetics and Phonology in Europe in June. I don't know whether anyone is going. If anyone is going, then maybe I'll see you there. So Persian, it has lexical pitch accents, there are in the literature there are different terms referring to their lexical prosody. Some people call it word stress, some people call it word prominence, and some people call it pitch accent. But essentially they're referring to the same thing. It's lexical the Persian words, they have lexical prominence on the final syllables for most words. There are exceptions. There's a whole inventory of words that they have with initial or the pitch accent on other syllables, but most of them, the stress fall on the final syllable. And different from stress, the pitch accent in Persian is mainly manifested through pitch, and not so much on through duration or segment reduction. So here we've got a monosyllabic name, and then let's look at their the calling contour.
Naz.
This is the monosyllabic word. So if we have this name in English, how would the calling contour be? It would be something like Naz, right? And let's listen to it in Persian.
Naz.
This sounds very similar. Okay, so now we know the canonical form is basically a high peak and a sustained part and maybe a low boundary as well. And then let's see a name with two syllables. So this name is
Mina.
Mina. And if it's English, how would it be? It would be something like Mina. But let's listen to this one.
Mina.
Here, it's out of our expectation. Well, at least out of my expectation. The prominent part moved to the first syllable. And just to see whether it's a matter of moving it to the syllables that don't have the main pitch accent, or is it moving to the initial syllable, we look at trisyllabic calls. So for statement, it is
Nilufar.
Nilufar. If it's calling contour in English, it would be Nilufar. No. Sorry. It will be Nilufar. But this one,
Nilufar.
yes. Again, the main prominence goes to somewhere on the first syllable or between the first and the second syllable. And we also tested it in quadrisyllabic calls.
Raziane.
So this one has 4 syllables.
Raziane.
Again, regardless of what the initial pitch accent is, it moves it to the first syllable. So this was a very interesting thing to me when I first found out, because that means it's removing the lexical prosody. So regardless of the pitch accent, the lexical pitch accent, sentence intonation supersedes the lexical pitch accent. And the sentence intonation overrides any lexical prosody, at least in this context. As a tonal speaker, I just find it so fascinating. How can you erase the lexical contrast to accommodate a sentence intonation, especially for people's names? So yeah, this is fun for me. I hope it's also fun for you. And then after looking at the stress language and pitch accent language, let's come back to our tonal languages and come back to this question of, do tonal languages have intonation? I'm sure because most of us are tonal language speakers, we have a very intuitive answer to this. That is, yes, of course we have intonation, right? Otherwise, how would we ask a question without the question particle? But let's have a look why it's difficult. Intonation in the tonal language is so difficult to phonologize because the main cue, the main acoustic cue of F0 is used in so many different things. So it's used in lexical tone, lexical prominence, which is stress, tone sandy, and sentence prominence and sentence type. That means whether it's a statement, a question, or a call, that kind of thing. So from very early on, I started thinking about, what are the lexical level components and what are the sentence level components in sentence prosody in a tonal language. And if there is a sentence level, what are there any finer categories? I think I started this discussion, but haven't really come to a very firm conclusion yet. So I'm still working on this. And today I'm just going to show you some results from boundary tones in Mandarin varieties. Of course, the lexical and sentence prosodies, they can also interact through pitch accents, but today we just talk about boundary tones. So the conclusion, I'll just give you the conclusion first. The conclusion is there are many types of boundary tones, actually, and surprisingly. So we have a type called a floating boundary tone. I will explain this a little bit more. And then we also have actual boundary tone, and it can be monotonal, like one boundary tone, and it can be bitonal. It can even have more. So for a tone language where the F0 is used so much by the lexical items, it's quite surprising to me to find all of these extra tones that's added onto the lexical prosody. So let's talk about them one by one. A floating boundary tone, this is about this work has been done in Tianjin Mandarin. This is what I did for my PhD. Tianjin Mandarin is a good language to study intonation because I just love how symmetrical it is. It has two tone registers, two high tones, and then two tone shapes, two falling ones and two rising ones. So it has a high fall and a low fall, and a high rise and a low rise. So this makes any conclusion balanced. But if we look at the Mandarin tones, there are 3 out of the 4 tones that end with a high target. So sometimes when you read the literature in Standard Mandarin, some of the results are a little bit biased towards high tones. So this makes Tianjin Mandarin pretty good to study. And also I'm from Tianjin. That's also why. So we did some lab recording, basically just reading task. And initially I did record sentences, but then I realized to study the intonational patterns of a language that we don't know so much about, we need to start from the smallest unit. And here, if you remember what I showed you about the English statement and question contrast, they're so different. You will see how worried I was when I first got my results. They literally just looked the same to me, especially if you look at the tone 3 one, the low rising one. They look so similar that I'm not sure whether it is just variation between the tones or they're actually two tunes. And is it really like what those people say that Mandarin doesn't have any intonation? Let's listen to them and see whether you can perceive the contrast.
Ma, 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 ma.
I know you can hear the difference, but Is it enough for you to decide whether it is a question or a statement? Let's look for it further. So I did do some simple analysis of the mean values like mean F0 and also the mean pitch range of different types. And those actually gave me the initial inspiration of how to analyze my data. But later on, I wanted to use something more sophisticated to illustrate the differences. So I used functional FPCA, functional principal component analysis. This is a dimension reduction technique, and it can deal with time series data. The main thing of this method is it finds the most important and representative factors in the data. So this is after aligning, basically cutting the onset and the rhyme, we get these average contours. The red ones are the questions and the purple ones are the statements. So here for F1, for tone 1, which is the low falling tone, the two contours, they really do look very similar. But the FPCA could tell you that there's a register difference, and then there's something happening at the boundary. I'll skip the other ones because in theory, they're just the same. And the results we got from this set of data is that the questions have higher registers, so basically they're high in as a whole. And then the second result is that the falling tones, they don't fall as much as deeply, and the rising tones, they rise more. So there's something, if we make it a phonological analysis, there's something anchoring these two tones here, these two types of tones here, and making the rising ones rise more, and this one deters the fall from falling further. And this is the floating boundary tone that I'm talking about. It doesn't have a phonetic realization for itself, but it modifies the canonical lexical tones. So when a fall is supposed to be like this, it doesn't fall as deeply. It is important because we will see that in tonal languages, we also have actual boundary tones. This is also from my PhD work. This is a calling contour from Tianjin Mandarin. So this will be very loud. I'm sorry, but I can't make it not as loud.
Wait.
Oh, this one isn't as loud, but the call is because it's calling from afar is very loud.
Wait.
This is a falling one. So as you can see, the initial falling one is just like a more level-ish kind of fall. But when it becomes a calling contour, it just falls so much more. And then for rising one, we can see it actually has an extra low target that made the whole lexical contour change, and it's an additional tone that's added onto the existing lexical tone. There's some F0 max and min data about it as well. I'm just gonna skip this because we're running out of time. So compared with the floating boundary tone, the actual boundary tone actually adds a little bit to the existing tones. And we also have proof in standard Mandarin. This is from like a little corpus that I collected from TV series, shows, that kind of thing. You can see this one is a very exaggerated one. It goes it sustains for a long time and then it ends with a fall. And then we can actually have more. So in Korean doesn't have any lexical prosody, but they have very rich intonation, sentence intonation, and they can have as many as 5 boundary tones. This is one of the examples.
글쎄요.
So that part is the boundary tone. And let's have a look how our Mandarin can deal with it too. So as I said, I collected a little propra built from TV shows and recorded with my phone. And there are things like this. So this is the first example with the bitonal boundary tone.
我叫孟鹤堂。
So the target lexical tone should be tang, but if you listen to it,
我叫孟鹤堂。
it's tang. So it has a rise, which is the original lexical tone, and then it falls. So this is the high-low part. And in the same context,
周九良。
so this one also goes up and then go down a little bit.
孟鹤堂的孟。
As you can see, this one should be a falling tone. And then to get the high-low boundary tone, it actually goes up first and then go down. That's why it sounds richer than the previous example, although they have the same boundary tones. And you can use it for this type of sadio kind of tune as well.
老师，我不服。
So this fu goes up a little bit and then go down. And it can also happen with a toneless tone.
同意了吧？
So the ba should have a low target, but now it has a high target because the high-low boundary tone has dragged it up. This is a third tone.
恶毒的皇上恩宠。
So this is more prominent whenever it has a rising one, it's more prominent because it goes down by quite a bit.
恶毒的皇上恩宠。
So the original lexical tone should be chong, but this one goes chong, and you can hear the little tail. It can be used for sarcasm as well.
我当一条鱼，我当一只猫。
So yu is the lexical tone, but here is yu. So it go up and then go down. And mao is the lexical tone, and then this one goes mao. You can if you break it apart, then it's mao mao. That all part is the falling boundary tone. So if we draw the original lexical tone and then with the boundary tone, it would look like this. So it's always a fall at the end. Whether it is something that you need to drag up the pitch first, it is a fall in the end. And then the last bit is the quadritonal boundary tone. So this one,
不是这个梦。
so here it goes up and then go down and then go up and then go down. So this is very different from the bitonal one that we just looked at. This is apart from, well, this is one of the examples I had. And then this is another example with the rising lexical tone. So the original tone is 行, but here is 行, So it go down and then go up and then go down. So it's actually, yeah, it's a very interesting thing to me, how the lexical tones interact with the sentence prosody and how sentence prosody can actually give so much to the lexical tones. My last slide is the conclusion, or is there any conclusion? It's work in progress. I still have to think a lot about it. So different lexical prosody types, they can accommodate different sentence prosodies in different ways. Some with stronger sentence prosodies that can override the lexical prosody, and some with stronger lexical prosody like English that anchors all the sentence prosody, and some coexist, like how in Mandarin we can either modify the tonal contour without erasing the tonal contrast, or how we can add tones, add one tone, add two tones, add many more tones to the end of the sentence. There has been similar discussions in the literature, but yeah, I think we're continuing to discover more and more of these phenomena. And the intonation variability in tonal languages can be much more than what we expect. So this concludes my talk today. I hope it's interesting, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you.